Hello everyone, this is part 5 of What If Naruto Formed a New Team, and I hope you guys enjoy this video and to like, to subscribe, to share, and check out the playlist, to see more comment down below. Now let's start the intro.
They call me a god. They call me a god. They call me a god.
Join my membership, the perks are great. It's in the description. Sheesh, this kid is a load of trouble. Jiraiya sighed while rubbing the back of his head. Maybe he should be sent back to Suna, so that way we can. This child will stay here until I decide otherwise, Jiraiya. The Hokage said sternly. He took a drag on his pipe and closed his eyes for a moment. The red-haired boy was passed out on a maroon armchair, curled in a ball and twitching from time to time. The toad Senin sighed. What was he thinking? Bringing such an unpredictable Jinchuriki into the Hidden Leaf village wasn't his best idea. Certainly he had a fair understanding of the boy's ability to cause mayhem with his sand, having experienced it firsthand on a number of occasions, but he hadn't taken his plight seriously. Jiraiya hadn't anticipated the instability of the boy's seal to actually hurt the boy. It just looked like he was able to hurt others. But the Sandaime was adamant in keeping Gaara's presence in Konoha quiet, even if it would be extremely difficult. The boy's seal can't be fully repaired, Hiruzen continued, however I will be able to restrict a majority of the Bijuu's chakra. He will need a great amount of training in chakra control. Jiraiya smirked, I saw to that myself and he's not doing that bad either. The Hokage turned to face his former pupil. Even so, was it wise to pit him against the water country child? They may be young Jiraiya, but that makes them no less destructive. No one cared about that sissy fountain anyway. The Senin muttered, recalling how Haku had ravaged it for its water. The Hokage frowned, they've barely spent one day here, and already there are property damages. Gaara rolled over on the cushions and made a small sleepy sound. Hey, I can see why Naruto gets along with those two so well. Jiraiya chuckled, hopefully, they'll have enough sense to avoid becoming pranksters like him. The Sandaime nodded absently while examining Gaara's arm. With a heavy sigh he set the boy's arm back down and took a seat behind his desk. It is in a moment like this that I am truly in awe of the Yondaime's work. Hiruzen said softly, this boy won't be near as fortunate as Naruto. His seal will still be considerably weaker. Jiraiya had faith, the sand squirt can tough it out. In the same moment the Sandaime made a motion to adjust his hat, the door to his office flew open with a resonating thud, and a flustered-looking child barreled in, unable to catch his breath. Black Ops guards outside were still shouting at the disobedient boy as he hurriedly entered the Hokage's office. For a long moment, Naruto stared at Jiraiya, nearly at a loss for words. He couldn't quite explain what was on his mind, or how he could make anyone understand what had happened. Naruto was still panting. His face was scrunched up in recognizable fear and what looked like a hint of anger. The sage looked at the blonde boy oddly, oh right. I haven't been gone for that long. What could have happened? Jiraiya as well as the third regarded Naruto silently for another long moment. Oh, maybe Haku found another water source to demolish. The Senin thought, hoping he wouldn't be the one to pay for any more damages. His cerulean eyes locked onto the Sandaime. Hokage-sama. So many people. All of them. The Hokage looked at Naruto puzzled, while waiting for him to inhale more air. Apparently the matter was very urgent. Naruto began again, more clearly, Hokage-sama, the people in Sasuke's clan. All of them are S. There were B lying in the street, we couldn't do anything. What the hell are you talking about, kid? Jiraiya had never seen Naruto act in such a manner. The blonde boy was livid, don't you hear what I'm telling you, old man? Hurry up. Someone K them all and we have to go back because Haku and everyone could be in trouble. The sage was confounded. Poor Naruto had to be the bearer of bad news. The Hokage looked highly disturbed. Even though he had been making great efforts for the past months to protect the Uchiha clan, the unthinkable had occurred. Even Jiraiya couldn't know of this failure. The implications could be disastrous. Is this true, Naruto? What you saw? Hiruzen asked for confirmation. Naruto didn't even notice Gaara fast asleep in the armchair beside him. Now wasn't the time for the adults to be acting stupid. At the Uchiha place, Naruto screamed, upset that he wasn't being understood, the people that live there, they're S. Whoever K them might still be there. The statement made things a bit clearer for the Hokage. There had been other recent Uchiha deaths, but at intervals. The final blow had arrived. Hiruzen was particularly troubled that young children had come across the M. The Hokage nodded. I see, Naruto. You will lead Jiraiya to wherever your friends are and ensure their safety. I will send an Anbu squadron as well to investigate. Jiraiya gave the Sandaime a dubious look. Do you really think? Go. The Hokage had a great amount of trust in the young boy. I need to contact the squadron leader. You will be faster. The Toad Sennin looked to the blonde boy and observed the shattered expression on his face. Where most children so young are oblivious to death and Naruto's face made it apparent that what he had seen was no figment of his imagination. Jiraiya lowered his voice. All right. Lead the way, kid. His frustration ended and Naruto nodded fervently, with a new respect for the sage. Jiraiya followed the anxious boy out of the office quickly and Hiruzen took another long drag on his pipe. A Black Ops guard poked his masked face into the office, wondering what had happened. Sir. The Hokage gazed absently at Gaara for a moment and sighed. The third gave his attention to the puzzled Anbu. Listen carefully, I doubt I can stress the seriousness of this situation. Sakura-chan. Haku. The children looked gratefully at Naruto as he bounded back with Jiraiya. Sakura was relieved Naruto had done it so quickly. She had managed to wake Haku up, and although he had been horrified by their surroundings, assisted her in carrying Sasuke to the entrance of the estate. He was still unconscious. Naruto kneeled down beside his careworn friends. Hey guys, was everything alright while I was gone? I guess, Sakura answered softly, we have to leave this place. It's so quiet and it's scary. Do you mind explaining to me what happened? Jiraiya folded his arms across his sea and looked down at the children. Haku and Naruto sat side by side, unable to completely describe the situation. Sakura sat with Sasuke's head in her lap. Her expression was somber. Well, Gama Sennin. She looked up meekly at Jiraiya. Sasuke invited us to go home with him so we could show each other our jutsu. So we did, Naruto added. And when we got here just down there, Sakura pointed to a street down further, there'd be all over the place. Sasuke's family. I figured. The Sennin's voice was grim. Someone K them. Naruto growled, whoever did it, I'll make them pay. Jiraiya looked Naruto square in the eye. Oh really? Use your heads. Whoever is responsible could make short work of all of you. Staying here is the last thing you should have considered. But we couldn't leave without Haku-kun and Sasuke-kun. Sakura retorted, and someone had to go tell the Hokage. Naruto nodded in full agreement. Yeah. So while Shorty here came to find me, the rest of you squirts could be turned into chopped liver or worse, am I right? Jiraiya snorted, but whatever, the point is you're alive, but you can't make a habit of risking yourselves that way. Even if Jiraiya didn't do a good job of showing it, he did care for the safety of his misfit kids. Hey Sakura-chan, is Sasuke alright? Naruto noticed the sleeping Uchiha survivor in her care. She glanced at the raven-haired boy before answering, I think he is. I guess he just couldn't take it anymore. Naruto's startled gasp interrupted her when he noted a number of lithe, dark figures in masks darting across the rooftops. After a moment he relaxed, recognizing them from when he had barged uninvited into the Hokage's office. The blonde boy turned to the Sennin and observed the grave expression on his face. What are they going to do? Naruto asked the sage. Anbu Black Ops teams are the first to appear at a crime scene this horrific. The Hokage relies on these elite ninja to get to the bottom of matters quickly and guarantee the safety of the village, Naruto. The Sennin elaborated, sadly they will only be trying to solve this considering that they arrived too late. I don't expect someone your age to really understand the role of Black Ops in our village. Even if Naruto took every opportunity to reprimand Jiraiya's perverted antics, he was still comforted to know that the man was looking out for them. He felt more nervous than ever, seeing Anbu forces descend on the scene swiftly and silently to examine the B of the Uchiha clan and locate their K. Naruto did his best to stay calm and ignore the presence of the ghost-like shinobi nearby. Jiraiya noticed the new boy with the pink-haired girl, noting the dark hair and family crest that were associated with the Uchiha clan. This boy is Uchiha Sasuke, right? He's the only one that survived. The man asked. Naruto nodded. Exhaling, Jiraiya bent down and scooped the unconscious boy into his arms. He looked from Sakura to Haku to Naruto and then nodded. Let's get out of here, kids. This is way more than you needed to see. The time it took for them to leave the Uchiha compound and return to the Hokage's tower seemed little more than a depressed blur, and they each took a seat in a waiting area, rattled into silence. After what seemed like an eternity, the third came out to them, closing the door quietly behind him. He looked at the Toad Sennin expectantly. It doesn't look good, Hokage-sama. Jiraiya sighed. There weren't any reports of survivors except for this little squirt. He gestured to Sasuke, who was laid on a bench. The Sandaime nodded solemnly and then turned to Sasuke. He'll be taken care of. He appears to have a small injury. Sakura's eyes darted over to the unconscious boy. She had a piece of her shirt and tied it around his arm. The bee had stopped, but his mental trauma was not likely to go away. A black ops guard beside Hiruzen moved and lifted Sasuke, ordered to escort him to the hospital for observation. Naruto sat cross-legged in his chair, wearing an uncharacteristic frown on his face. This was supposed to be a good day. Sakura and Haku were sitting quietly. It was likely the same thought had crossed their minds. First the unorthodox attempt to rescue Hyuga Neji, and then Haku and Gaara's dismal fight, and lastly the macabre scene they came upon after venturing into the Uchiha compound. It wasn't exactly what Naruto had in mind after returning home. Jiraiya exchanged a few words with the Hokage regarding Naruto and his friends. I think it may be best if Naruto, Haku and Gaara live together. They'll be good support for each other and you'll have an easier time keeping an eye on them that way. He suggested, maybe you should give them a bigger place. I've already arranged it, Jiraiya. They'll have a stipend as well and they've been enrolled at the academy. Jiraiya was pleased the boys would be provided for. They had a fighting chance of becoming shinobi after all, he believed. He was also remorseful that he couldn't shield them from the Uchiha. If he had only kept the children occupied for a short while longer, they could have avoided the gruesome scene altogether. They were all in a poor state and had been exposed to the true horror of death, in his opinion, far too soon. The sage sighed to himself and sat down next to the oddball children. A cloud of smoke surrounded the Hokage's head as he stood motionlessly by the door. What happened to all of those people? Haku asked in a low voice. Sakura furrowed her brow. She herself didn't know for sure, but decided to share her opinion anyway. I heard Sasuke keep talking about someone while he was out. Someone named Itachi. I think they're related. Naruto watched Sakura intently, his insides writhing. Maybe, he did it. She said barely above a whisper. The idea was sickening. Related, Sakura had said. Few things could drive family members to eradicating their entire clan, and the thought of it made him feel ill once again. Just the way those poor people Naruto thought to himself, but how could it have happened? Sasuke, he didn't seem to look like he had expected it, like he and his family members were close. The last idea filled the blonde boy with bitterness for a moment. He had never had a family to love or to be close with or to be sad with, or in this case, be violently unhappy with. Naruto just couldn't picture a normal family tearing each other to pieces. He had seen many families. He had always been the outsider. While wistfully observing parents and siblings interact during the daily activities, Naruto had never seen any of them express such terrible aggression. Naruto suddenly felt unsafe. What was the world coming to? He had endured beatings from strangers on the street, but he couldn't imagine what would happen if his own family was stolen away. He believed that Konoha had been a safe place. He shivered at the thought of fellow villagers, people of the same clan even, destroying each other. Naruto bowed his head and silently grieved for Sasuke's enormous loss. Haku looked at the Sandaime with a completely innocent expression. Hokage-sama, if they're related, how could he have just? He trailed off, unable to understand it, and not really wanting to. His father had chosen a similar course of action regarding him. Itachi is your friend's older brother, Hiruzen answered honestly. If he truly is responsible as you suspect him to be, then he will be dealt with severely. It pained him that he could not explain to the youngsters that tragedies often had catalysts. The three children cringed at the word, brother, and then blocked the rest of the sentence out. After a moment, the Hokage looked down at the pink-haired girl. Miss Haruno, I've been informed that you are missing, or rather, your parents have been looking for you since early this morning. I suggest you return home and end their worries. Sakura blushed a furious shade of pink and leapt to her feet. Oh no. I forgot. She walked in a small circle before stopping in front of Naruto and Haku. I guess I better go home, huh? I hope they aren't too mad. Jiraiya chuckled. Someone was in for a scolding. I'll see you guys tomorrow. Sakura shouted and ran out of the waiting room, then poked her head back in. Oh, will you tell Gaara-kun that I hope he feels better? Naruto nodded with a small smile. Sure thing, Sakura-chan. She grinned at the both of them, and after a hurried farewell to the Hokage and Toad Sennin, she departed in a flash of pastel pink. As casually as possible, Jiraiya posed a question on his former teacher. So, how's the Sand Kid doing anyway? Hiruzen took a short drag before answering. The young one's seal has been strengthened, though I recommend he catch up on any sleep he may have been deprived of. The Sennin looked smug. Maybe this would mark the end of Gaara's unfair disturbances to his precious research. Haku coughed softly before leaning over in his seat to listen to a joke Naruto had been saving. The third glanced at the children curiously. Naruto, I will be increasing your allowance in order to support Haku and Gaara as well. They will be living with you, he announced. I also expect you three to take your studies at the academy seriously. Thanks, Hokage-sama. Naruto was genuinely touched, though, sometimes villagers can be mean to me and I don't want them being mean to Haku and Gaara too. You leave that to me. Naruto grinned gratefully at the Hokage. The blonde was most uplifted by the prospect of being able to live with his friends from then on. The door to the Hokage's office had opened without them noticing. Haku and Naruto looked up to see Gaara swaying in the doorway. He looked peaky and a bit disheveled, but was clearly in a good mood judging by the small smile in his face. The red-haired boy turned to Haku. Good fight, Haku. Clearly he was behind on a few things. Jiraiya and Hiruzen watched with mild amusement as Haku and Naruto leapt from their respective chairs and bounded over to Gaara, grinning in relief. Gaara. Naruto patted his back. How are you doing? That was a pretty crazy fight you had with Haku. He should be fine from now on. The Hokage assured them. Gaara still swaying in a dreamy state in the doorway. Oh Gaara, Sakura-chan says she hopes you're feeling better, Haku recalled. Are you feeling better? Gaara absently scratched his arm and yawned. Yes, better than I've felt in a while. The Hokage gave a reproachful look to the sage and Jiraiya sighed. Ugh, well squirts, I'm sorry that you had to see all that nasty stuff back there. I'll take you guys out to dinner tonight, what do you say? I know you haven't eaten. All right, Naruto cheered, this means you're paying. Yeah. Hiruzen looked very pleased. Gaara still wore the eerie, blithe expression he had on since he had woken up, and Haku suddenly felt a rush of normalcy return to them. Maybe a noisy dinner later on would help them forget what had happened at the Uchiha compound. Gah, I should have known. Jiraiya grumbled. When evening came, Naruto had insisted that they go to Ichiraku Ramen. The Sennin protested but was immediately overruled by three small, hungry faces. They sat in a line at the bar, Naruto, Gaara, Haku and Jiraiya, each having a unique perspective of the ramen shop. The owner was very pleased to have a group of customers and was friendly to Naruto. Gaara and Naruto were halfway through their first bowls of miso within 50 seconds, although Naruto was clearly in the lead. Haku did his best not to watch while slowly slurping his beef ramen with a green face. Jiraiya smirked. They were annoying, yes, but they were growing on him. Still, the sage feared that Naruto's alarming eating habit was beginning to rub off on Gaara, the way he eats. I'll have nightmares about it. Gaara seemed to be enjoying himself immensely as he and Naruto asked for a second bowl. He felt so refreshed it was almost alien, yet he also felt a huge desire to sleep, not at all threatened by the thought of the inner voice that may haunt his dreams. Try not to overdo it, you two. Jiraiya feared they may decide to move on to a fourth bowl and was concerned for Haku, who was looking greener every moment. I knew this wasn't a good idea. Hey Gaara, I was wondering. Naruto said after a slurp of noodles, when you and Haku were sparring, when you went nuts, could you hear that voice? Gaara looked at him bewildered for a moment. How did you know? I guessed, the blonde shrugged. You were acting like that when we first met you, right Haku? Haku nodded. Yes, that's right. Jiraiya see-in, don't worry about voices anymore. The Hokage and I took care of that problem for you. Gaara smiled at the Sennin before he continued eating. After a frightening amount of noodles, it was much too late for young children to be awake. Jiraiya followed the three boys as they darted beneath lampposts, recalling the day's events some more fondly than others. Remind me again why you had to butt into the Hyuga clan's affairs. The sage asked Naruto. You could have gotten your kicked if it had gone badly. Hinata-chan and Neji needed our help, Ero Sennin. Naruto bit back, standing outside the door of his apartment. Just so you know, Hokage-sama is sending someone here tomorrow to help you pack up. You'll be moving to a new place that fits the three of you. Jiraiya reminded him. Yeah. Naruto acknowledged as he opened the door. Gaara looked slightly excited. I can't wait to sleep. Haku laughed at the red-haired boy's enthusiasm for such a trivial thing as they ventured inside Naruto's place, but he could understand how appealing a peaceful night's sleep sounded to him. Jiraiya looked back, noting that the loud blonde had not gone inside. Naruto. He looked around and then sighed. Sheesh, he was just here. The Sennin poked his head into the apartment, surprised by how clean it was. You two get some sleep. I'm gonna have a talk with the loud mouth, Jiraiya announced to Haku and Gaara, who was already passed out on the couch. Haku frowned disapprovingly. You mean Naruto? Yeah. Jiraiya rubbed the back of his head. We'll be back later. Without another word, the sage closed the door, wondering how and why Naruto had managed to slip away so quickly without being noticed. Pain in my A. Naruto sat silently on a stone face of the Hokage monument, gazing at the ethereal stars dotting the black sky. He felt frustrated with the perverted toad hermit for always doubting him and poking fun. He huffed to himself. Maybe he shouldn't have just taken off like that. Haku and Gaara might worry, and that was the last thing he wanted. Naruto appreciated that he had a spot to go to by himself now that he finally had friends. He never suspected that he would ever want to be alone again after meeting Gaara and Haku, but he just needed to clear his head. Hey kid. Alas, he spoke too soon. Naruto looked up at Jiraiya and sighed. How'd you find me, old man? I'm the legendary Toad Sage, for cripe's sake, give me some credit. Jiraiya's voice then softened. What are you doing up here? I come here to think. The Sennin smirked. Well, that's a swell habit to get into. Naruto ignored his sarcasm and kept his focus on the stars. With a defeated sigh, Jiraiya sat down next to the small boy. What a weird kid. The sage had never witnessed Naruto sulking before, even in his short while of knowing him. He wouldn't have dreamed that the cheerful boy was capable of sulking. Why do you look so down, squirt? I'm not down, Ero Sennin. Naruto sighed, trying to dodge the question. Jiraiya made a doubtful face and then gazed out from their high vantage point at the city of Konoha. He smiled nostalgically at the lights and buildings below. I don't come here too often nowadays, being a hermit, Jiraiya began, though sometimes I do get a bit homesick. It's hard to forget how beautiful it is here. Naruto lowered his eyes, but it's really a lot different than it looks. I know they don't treat you that well, kid. Don't let it get to you, Jiraiya said quietly. Just try to remember the important things and ignore the around here. You do have people who care for you. If I become a strong ninja, then they'll stop hating me. Naruto surmised, they'll respect me when I'm Hokage. You know, you don't have to be Hokage just to impress people. There are other ways to be strong, the Sennin chuckled. People who are precious to you give you reasons to be strong, to protect them and to not give up. You know, like the farm boy and sand kid. I do care about Haku and Gaara, Naruto admitted, but how can I protect them when they're stronger than me? It's like, they have powers and I'm just me. What's wrong with that? Naruto frowned. They'll end up protecting me. And I didn't realize when we met that they were so. What? Are you complaining? Jiraiya sniggered. Just because they were born with their abilities doesn't make them stronger than anyone, even, dare I say it. You. The blonde boy blinked. Sheesh, I mean, you think I didn't see you throw that shuriken towards the sand kid at the Hyuga compound? The Sennin smirked cleverly. Do you honestly believe that Haku or Gaara could do that? Well, maybe if. My point is, don't underestimate yourself, kid. Jiraiya barked. You'll only be as strong as you let yourself be, so don't hold back. Strength isn't measured by cool powers last I checked. Naruto felt a small smile tug at his lips. You know, way back, I had a student like you. You did? Oh yeah. Jiraiya went on. Scrawny, weird kid like you, blonde, athletic, had a good idea from time to time. he wasn't sure what the future held for him either. Although Naruto was offended by the hermit's remark on having good ideas from time to time, he was still interested in what he had to say. What happened to him? Well, he did his best, and it landed him in the right position, I'd say. He ended up creating a powerful technique of his own. He could summon toads without blinking, trained his own genin team, and helped us win the war against the Hidden Rock. He was a great ninja, really brave. Jiraiya paused, and were kind of sitting on his head. Naruto jumped 10 feet in the air in shock. You trained the fourth Hokage? No way. Jiraiya yanked the stunned boy back down to sit. Sheesh. Calm down, kid. But yeah, I did. He was my best student, and a good friend. Naruto suddenly felt a great swell of regret for insulting the Toad Hermit so often, when he really was responsible for training one of the greatest ninja Konoha had ever seen. Yeah, he was smart too. Excellent with seals, he valued the village and his friends above all else. Jiraiya continued, that's what made him strong. A very inspired Naruto clung to Jiraiya's every word, forgetting what a pervert he was. Though, he did have help. Jiraiya reached behind him and removed the large scroll he had kept on his back. He placed it proudly in front of Naruto. Do you know what this is, kid? Obviously a scroll, but there was nothing more he could decipher, not really. Jiraiya went on, it's a summoning contract, Naruto. A what? Tell me, kid, in the battle against the Kyuubi, what did the fourth ride to battle on? The Sennin asked. Naruto had only caught bits and pieces of that story, but was able to answer, a huge toad. Ah, Gamabunter, right. Jiraiya grinned, okay, so you've got some history in that head of yours, yep. He used this summoning contract as I have to summon toads, and at times, Gamabunter. Naruto's ocean eyes were as wide as saucers, can I do it too? Jiraiya had actually considered this for a short while earlier. Why not teach the kid? It could give him an edge against Haku and Gaara, if he did it correctly. Sure, but it'll be hard, I can promise that, Jiraiya replied, opening the scroll, look here. This is my name and the fourth C. Signing this contract enables you to summon toads, which basically needs a S of B along with the right seals. So you'll teach me. His volume was rising again in excitement. Yeah, what? Am I talking for my health? The sage said, you need to sign in B though and then put your handprint next to it. Naruto, in a state of astonished excitement, signed his name next to the Yondimes without a moment's hesitation. His name gleamed in red on the scroll. There was no way he could get the huge grin off of his face. So can you show me now? Geez, you're impatient. Pay attention, Squirt. Jiraiya guided Naruto through the steps of a small B and the proper seals. The blonde boy memorized every last step. Got it. Jiraiya watched Naruto nod his head like a bobblehead doll. Well, give it a shot. Right. Naruto was shaking with excitement, determined to get it right. While focusing his chakra, he bit his thumb and quickly drew B, and went through the seals, boar, dog, bird, monkey, ram. His heart almost stopped when there was a puff of smoke and Jiraiya raised an eyebrow at his success. A tadpole. Jiraiya screamed with laughter and Naruto stood next to him, stricken and shocked. The blonde boy looked at the Sennin, slightly frustrated that he hadn't even summoned a fully grown toad. After getting over his little joke, Jiraiya exhaled, and Naruto sat back down, wondering if he could have done better. I'll do it again. He was determined. You can't expect Gamabunter on your first try, kid. You start small and work your way up. That's the nature of things. Jiraiya explained while grinning, keep trying, Naruto, you've got plenty of time. Konoha didn't know what hit it. It was quite possible that 6 years had made the hidden village a bit keener to the types of shinobi it had been producing. A select few had been more noticeable than others, and rumors had been spread that the Hokage had abducted young children from foreign countries just for the sake of training purposes. Still, there was nothing that confirmed or denied that children had been brought to the Leaf Village, and the Hokage said nothing more on the matter. So people stopped caring and assumed that rumors of foreign invaders were only slander that had been circulated by the attention-seeking Junin of Konoha. Nothing seemed out of place, especially on a street corner in the dim light of the morning, where a silent apartment building stood innocently in the center of the shady town. On the third level, a window was left ajar, letting sweet, fresh sunshine spill inside and illuminate the room that had welcomed it in. A room that, in fact, was piled high with a number of mounds of dirty laundry, which curiously resembled haystacks in a freakish sort of way. And beyond the tangle of dirtied clothing were shelves of strange plants, ninjutsu scrolls and the occasional weapon. The wall on which the shelves had been mounted on was a peculiar shade of green with a few evident dents and chips in it, which was almost completely obscured by random pin-ups and calendars, all carefully arranged around a single framed photo of 3 young boys. The tallest, with long dark hair, stood pleasantly in the middle, while a frustrated-looking red-haired boy looked as if he had been dragged into the shot at the last second. Beside them was a grinning blonde boy with exuberant blue eyes, brandishing an enthusiastic thumb up to no one in particular. Beneath the wooden frame some distance below was said blonde boy, snoring gently in his messy bed. His penguin cap flopped childishly to the side and he was lying in what looked to be an uncomfortable position. Beneath his mop of wild, golden hair his fine, whiskered face was well pronounced in the bright morning light. A wide smile adorned his mouth as he had carefree dreams of delicious ramen. Wake up. A redhead with fierce, glacial eyes stood by the window wearing an impassive expression. A large gourd was tied to his back and he had his arms folded across his sea as he came to wake his snoozing roommate. Gaara had suspected that he wouldn't get very far by talking the slumbering Naruto back to consciousness. He roughly shook the blonde by the shoulder. Naruto's head lolled to the side with no response. He did so for a few moments before stopping himself. And as if he couldn't be any more irritable, Naruto gave a loud snore and rolled over, proving how futile Gaara's attempts had been. The red-haired boy frowned, his patience was wearing thin. Snore. Again, Gaara doubted that there was any way that this morning could have started without use of excessive force. Sand leaked from the gourd on his back and made its way expertly towards an unsuspecting blonde. With a shudder, the entire mattress was overturned, and the red-haired boy watched in great satisfaction as Naruto sailed across the room with a strangled yelp. There was also an uncalled-for as somewhere a china pot that had belonged to Haku shattered into 1,000 cobalt pieces. Naruto can pay for it. A groan of pain came from beneath the blanket that had draped itself over the rudely awoken boy, and the penguin cap that had once been on Naruto's head was caught on the ceiling fan. The sleepy blonde looked at Gaara bleary-eyed, and as if it were routine asked, "Morning already?" Gaara was still frowning. "Haku-kun left an hour ago, Naruto-kun." After replacing his once airborne mattress, Naruto scratched his head and stifled a yawn, seemingly unfazed. "Haku-kun always leaves early." The redhead's eye twitched slightly. "You have 5 minutes. Huh, 5 minutes to what, Gaara-kun? To get to the academy on time. I'm leaving. What? Naruto tripped over a haystack of laundry and looked to Gaara, who was walking casually out of his bedroom. Naruto began to dress himself in record time, and as Gaara left without a care in the world, the blonde called after him with a small hint of contempt, "Hey, thanks for waking me b." Konoha's #1 hyperactive ninja pelted down the sidewalk at top speed, grinning as he caught up with his red-haired friend who had been walking leisurely with his arms still folded. "So you thought you could ditch me, eh, Gaara?" Gaara looked sidelong at the blonde next to him. Did he even stop to brush his teeth? Maybe it'd be better if he didn't ask. "No. However, I did assume that you'd at least try to make an attempt not to be late today, but it appears I expect too much from you." Naruto smirked and faked a punch at Gaara's face, then grabbed his upper arm suddenly. "Well, come on, Gaara-kun. We don't wanna be late." The redhead sighed as Naruto proceeded to drag him the rest of the way to the ninja academy, leaving a trail of dust in his wake. Sometimes Gaara wondered how this had become their routine every morning. Overhead, dark clouds rolled in front of the sun. With only seconds to spare, both Naruto and Gaara collapsed into their seats next to a good-looking boy with long, ebony hair. A group of his fangirls were dawdling nearby, chatting excitedly to each other. Haku smiled knowingly as his best friends once again arrived barely on time. "So tell me, what did you break today?" "China pot." Gaara panned. "The blue one." The red-haired boy nodded, not feeling very remorseful over what he had so carelessly destroyed. Still, Haku appeared distressed and sighed to himself. When would the vicious cycle end? Naruto had his head bowed onto his desk, gearing up for a nap. Even Gaara's morning beatings weren't proving as effective as they had been for keeping him awake these days. He found himself increasingly tired, or at least, bored with the lectures at the academy. "Settle down, please." Iruka called out above the chatter of the class. "Roll call." Naruto had his eyes closed but listened for his name to be called, just so he could have a reason to raise his voice. Gaara sat quietly while Haku scanned over a scroll while names were announced. Haku. The dark-haired boy raised his hand, and across the room his admirers twittered enthusiastically. Gaara. Gaara only blinked, his typical response, but was still accounted for. It went on. Naruto waited to be called, though his head did dart up after hearing Hinata and Sakura being called, upset he had come in late and was unable to talk to them. Naruto. Oh yeah. I'm here, Iruka-sensei. Yes, I can see that. The Chunin instructor sighed. Once Iruka had gone through the entire roster, he went on as it fell quiet. Today, as you all are aware, is the Genin examination. Naruto's head shot up again in excitement. Today was the day he became a real ninja. Or trying. Haku leaned over towards Naruto and whispered, "You have been practicing your clones like you said, right, Naruto-kun?" Naruto waved him off. Yeah. It wasn't very convincing. Haku cringed. Clones were Naruto's worst jutsu, this he and Gaara knew, and if he hadn't at least been trying to form one correctly, there was little hope of him graduating. Maybe I'm overreacting, he'll be fine, Naruto-kun always comes through in the end. Haku tried to reaffirm the fact. After finishing his speech, which Naruto had only caught a few scant words of, Iruka added, "In a few moments we will begin with the first part of the exam." Gaara appeared as unperturbed as ever, but Haku gulped, hoping Naruto would do well. They began with the Henge no Jutsu. Students were required to transform into their teacher, namely Yumi no Iruka. There were mixed results with the first few students. Some did poorly, while others like Haruno Sakura and Uchiha Sasuke, copied Iruka's appearance perfectly. Sakura waved to Naruto after she had succeeded and he was confident he would do well. It was, after all, a skill he had perfected nearly 6 years ago. Grinning, Naruto formed the ram seal and transformed into the spitting image of his Chunin instructor, with the absence of the scar across his nose, and Iruka clarified the blunder. Cursing himself for missing a feature so obvious, Naruto chuckled, "Hey, I'll try again." "No, your henge was sufficient, so you don't." The blonde transformed again, not into Iruka, but into a voluptuous babe with pigtails that immediately gave Iruka the worst N he had ever had in his life. He undid the jutsu and had a good laugh at his teacher's reaction. "See the stupid tricks," Iruka snarled, trying to subdue the flow of B. "This is your last warning." Naruto was still laughing as he passed by Gaara and Haku, who only sighed at their friend's predictable, yet strangely effective prank which he had dubbed the S-jutsu. Haku and Gaara followed after Naruto, both of them transforming into Iruka faultlessly, and when they joined Naruto to watch the rest of the procession, he mumbled to them, "Show-offs." Haku sniffed in response, "Naruto-kun, this is no time for fooling around, this is the Genin exam. If you don't pass then you can't graduate." "I know, Haku-kun, I know. Don't worry about it." Again, Naruto waved off the dark-haired boy's concerns. The blonde observed the shy Hyuga girl stepping up to the front, and when she looked his way he gave her a reassuring thumbs up. She blushed a deep shade of scarlet and then proceeded to transform into Iruka. Gaara noted Hinata's timid tendencies towards Naruto. Does he really not notice? He found it such a waste that a girl as smart as Hinata, and not a worshipper of either Sasuke or Haku for that matter, would dote on a sadly oblivious person like Naruto. Frowning, Gaara looked at Naruto, who was congratulating the shy girl on a job well done. Maybe there is hope yet. The first stage was followed by target practice. The target range was a real death trap with Naruto around, who volunteered to go first. Iruka feared for the safety of the other students. "All right, just take it easy, Naruto." "I got it, Iruka-sensei." Naruto looked smug as he launched his shuriken at targets attached to trees on the other side of the courtyard. Incredibly, he made 4 bullseyes, and the last weapon, which he threw with a bit too much zeal, tore directly through the center of the final target. It was split clean in half. There were a few startled gasps as well as impressed shouts from namely Sakura and Haku. Iruka sighed to the other examiners, "Good lord. That was an unbelievable display, though. I don't know if any of the other students can do what Naruto just did," Iruka considered, smiling a bit to himself. Hinata was beaming all the while, not in the least frightened by the odd display of strength Naruto had shown on his last throw. Naruto gave Gaara a S on the back, as he often did, as he went ahead next, looking just as confident. Even more impressive than Naruto, all 5 of the red-haired boys' projectiles broke every target in half down the center. Students actually clapped, hoping that with no more targets left functioning, they would be exempt from that part of the exam. We don't have a big enough budget to keep up with the damages they cause. Mizuki, a fellow examiner, muttered to Iruka, who nodded solemnly in agreement. Much to the disappointment of the remaining students, more targets were brought out while Naruto raved about Gaara's mad skills. Gaara didn't seem much affected that he had once again destroyed school property. A few other students took their turns, and Sasuke, who also hit all 5 marks, ignored the cheering squad of fangirls who barely knew how to throw a shuriken, let alone cared about graduating. Haku looked paler than usual when he was evaluated. Naruto had his fingers crossed and Gaara glared at the targets, threatening them to jump in front of Haku's shuriken or suffer another untimely fate. They knew as well as Haku that his coordination came and went. He was a regular klutz when it came to projectiles, and he wasn't looking very confident. It wasn't so much of the disaster it could have been. The first shuriken just barely fell short of the target, while the second sailed far off to the right. Iruka held his head in his hands in disappointment as the third soared clean over the target. Panicked at his predictably poor performance, he hurled his last 2 shuriken together, which narrowly missed Naruto's head. Wah! Haku-kun, take it easy. There was nervous chatter among the students, and Haku's fangirls whined in great dismay over his abysmal aim. After making sure Naruto was in one piece, the dark-haired boy hung his head in humiliation. He had to admit, he had anticipated much worse. At least no one had been injured. But over the years, Haku had come to understand that he lacked the skill in hurling kunai and shuriken at enemies that Gaara and Naruto had. It's just so barbaric, lodging a kunai in someone's head. He thought to himself, I don't think I'll ever get the hang of it. Good try, Haku-kun, Gaara said quietly. I'm disappointed that you missed, Naruto-kun. I'm certain Iruka-sensei would have given you full marks for that. Haku laughed. Naruto glared at Gaara and growled, I think he could have gotten more credit for hitting you, Gaara. The red-haired boy smirked, you're right. That would have been impressive. From across the yard, a young Kunoichi watched Haku with great interest, despite his pathetic display. She narrowed her chocolate eyes in thought as he returned reluctantly to the cluster of students. Clearly he isn't comfortable with those weapons. I can fix that. All in due time, Gaara and Naruto also ran into their problem areas. As Naruto had told Haku, he had indeed been practicing his bunshin, but didn't necessarily say that he had actually done well. After producing only 1 replication, and a sickly one at that, Iruka firmly announced that Naruto had not done well enough to graduate, much to his disagreement. Gaara had also done poorly while performing the replacement technique. For reasons he didn't really care to explain, Mizuki-sensei said that I wasn't fluid with my substitution. Clearly he didn't have many nice things to say about the examiners that had failed him for something so ridiculous. Haku tried to comfort them by explaining that they always had next year to improve their techniques, but Naruto seemed to be taking it extremely hard. He had set his hopes high on graduating that day, which had proven very foolish. The 3 of them assembled by the swing outside the academy, watching with envy as the passing graduates gathered outside with their new forehead protectors. Let's get some lunch. Haku didn't want them to drown in their frustration. It's just afternoon. No thanks. Naruto stood to leave. I just wanna think right now. Haku nodded to him as the blonde left to brood by himself. He and Gaara had noticed how Naruto made himself scarce when he was feeling less than joyous, as to not upset his friends. It was another quirky habit of his. Do you think he's going to the Hokage monument again? Gaara inquired. Haku nodded, most likely. Mizuki had easily found the Naruto after the exam had terminated. It wasn't difficult at all to convince him once he had discovered him alone on a rooftop. He'd be the perfect scapegoat, the village prankster up to his old tricks again. Don't be upset with Iruka for being so hard on you, he's only looking after you. Mizuki explained to Naruto, trying to act like he cared. It just wouldn't be right to send you on missions when you aren't fully prepared. The blonde boy had a difficult time believing it. It was just one slip up. Really, Naruto, it won't do you much good now. Mizuki restrained himself from smirking, but I can help you. There are other ways to pass. Excuse me, you're Haku, aren't you? Haku turned from Gaara and looked at the girl who had addressed him. Thankfully it wasn't one of the rabid girls who were incessantly asking him out on dates, to which he would politely decline. Her brown hair was done up in 2 buns on top of her head, and judging by her hit I ate, she was clearly a seasoned ninja. Haku smiled at her. I am. His friendliness caught her off guard, but she went on, I'm Tenten. I graduated last year. I've heard that you're one of the best in your class. From Gaara's point of view, it was just another girl looking for a date. The dark-haired boy was modest as always, not really, seeing that I failed the Genin exam. As if the sky began to weep over such a tragedy on Haku's part, the dark clouds that were overhead gave way. She placed her hands on her hips and studied him for a moment while raindrops fell one by one. I saw you had some major problems with your weaponry. Grudgingly, he nodded. Gaara took note that this was not going the way he had anticipated, and felt that he should no longer intrude on the discussion. By some miracle, Sakura was standing at the front of the academy and was waving him over. He looked to Haku. I'll see you later. Once Gaara had departed, both Tenten and Haku decided to continue the discussion out of the rain. They darted beneath the overhang of a clothing shop as the drizzle turned into a downpour. Phew, that was close. It's been looking like rain all day. Tenten was smiling at the good fortune and Haku found her to be very pleasant company. But anyway, I need to know if there are any weapons you're comfortable with, Haku-san, she went on. I'd like to help you if I can. Please excuse my curiosity, Miss Tenten. It's just Tenten if you don't mind. Haku paused. Tenten then, how can you help me? I do find myself to be a lost cause with my atrocious aim. What he lacked in confidence he made up for in his eloquent speech. The Kunoichi gave him a skeptical look. You're not a lost cause, Haku. Besides, I specialize in weaponry. If there's anyone who can help you, it's me. Boy was he lucky. It wasn't every day a pretty girl offered to help him learn how to throw knives. So what's your fighting style? Tenten asked. Once I know I can determine what weapons you may be better suited for. A simple yet profound question. How do I fight? There was a simple solution to that. He relied heavily on his Kekkei Genkai, and he didn't see how that would help her decide on a weapon he could actually throw without flinching. Or maybe, that was exactly what she was looking for. I manipulate water, he said simply, earning a quizzical look from Tenten. Maybe a demonstration is in order. And water there was in abundance, nearly flooding the street. It was raining so hard. If only he had been so lucky during his exam. She watched in awe as Haku flicked his wrist and threads of water rose from the street and streaked through the air. He suddenly looked at peace and focused. After a minute of watching raindrops being cast aside in all directions, Tenten seemed to have had an epiphany. His technique was more graceful and he didn't seem to be the type wanting a messy fight. I get your style. Tenten nodded to him. I know just what you need. I'm sorry that you didn't pass, Gaara-kun, Sakura said supportively. You, Haku-kun and Naruto-kun. He shrugged in response as they stood in the entryway of the academy along with a few other students waiting out the rain. Gaara could honestly say that he hadn't expected things to go well after seeing calm and collected Haku tossing shuriken at Naruto, which had mildly amused him. I did poorly, so I'm not fit to graduate. Gaara said simply, not wanting to press the matter that was already burning him up. Sakura scowled, and it's that kind of attitude that won't get you anywhere. Those stupid examiners, you're more worthy to be a genin than I am. I doubt that. Again, she frowned. Why's that? Because you passed. Ugh. Gaara-kun, could you be any more apathetic? Gaara smirked. Would you like to see me try? No thanks, you already have me depressed. Ever since their childhood, Sakura had remained a loyal friend to Hinata, Naruto, Haku and Gaara. It was tearing her up that the 3 of her closest friends, whom she had nicknamed the trio, would not proceed into genin training with her. She was about ready to pick a fight with Iruka-sensei for failing them all, but that docile nature that she had shielded herself would not permit it. What a crappy day, Sakura muttered. She was in a worse mood than even Gaara. I'll walk you home, Sakura-chan. Sakura gave him a bothered look. Don't. It's pointless for both of us to get wet. Do you remember who you're talking to? She hadn't noticed the sand shield that had been surrounding them for the past minute and she mentally s herself. Oh, well, I guess I'm just so used to you by now that I don't notice these things. She chuckled sheepishly. He said nothing and stepped out into the rain, but couldn't help but notice the look of wonder on her face. The only other person they knew who could walk out in the rain without being soaked was Haku, for obvious reasons. Gaara listened patiently while she began another one-sided conversation during their walk. Something about Naruto's perverted jutsu, and it somehow reflected his cleverness in a sick sort of way. By the time they had reached her house, the rain had stopped, and Gaara's sand returned to his gourd. His hands were buried in his pockets, and he suddenly felt awkward around the pink-haired girl. Maybe I'll see you tomorrow. It was the maybe that irked Sakura. Things were uncertain now that he could not leave the academy. She frowned and then hugged him, giving him flashbacks of when they were young children when he had first come to Konoha with Naruto and Haku. Sakura smiled, "You will see me tomorrow." And she went inside, leaving him with an odd feeling in the pit of his stomach. He stood outside her door for a long moment, inhaling the moist air that smelled like rain, forest and Sakura. Gaara's spirit was lightened somewhat, and then seemed to do a nosedive after noticing Naruto in a flash of orange leaping over a number of nearby rooftops. He had a large scroll that he was certain his friend was not the owner of. That's conspicuous. Reluctantly, Gaara followed his blonde friend, hoping this wouldn't lead to any further complications. In a short while, Tenten had easily solved Haku's coordination problem. "Senbon are perfect for you." She was proud that he had picked up on throwing the needles so quickly. "Do you really believe you're a lost cause now, Haku?" They stood on the side of the empty, damp street, where he had been using a wooden telephone pole as a makeshift target. He embedded Senbon into the want ads and posters that were stapled to the pole. Haku fiddled with the 3 needles he had gripped in his hand. "Well, maybe not, but I can't say that I would have thought of this myself. You just practice, and you'll graduate in no time," Tenten said while tossing a few needles herself, lodging them in the bearded face of a man on a poster. "You'll need a good knowledge of the human body too if you want to study shinjutsu." The dark-haired boy regarded her for a moment while she casually flicked Senbon at the pole, and a small smile appeared on his face. "I'm very glad you found me, Tenten. I'm not quite sure what I would have done if..." She blushed. "It was nothing. Really. Just do me a favor and pass, will you?" Haku then had a thought. "I wonder, how did you come to find me anyway?" Tenten extracted the needles from the wooden beam and turned to him. "Oh, well, my teammate had mentioned you, actually. He said that when you were young that..." Haku. The dark-haired boy looked across the street and saw Gaara standing there. He was scowling, and Haku could tell that it probably had something to do with Naruto. "I think I should be going now," he sighed. "I'll come find you tomorrow so we can continue training." "Tomorrow?" Tenten mulled it over in her head. "Okay then. I really should go too. I kind of ditched my team to come find you." Haku gave her a grateful smile when she handed him a fistful of senbon. "Here, they're on me. I have plenty more for myself. It was nice meeting you, Haku." He watched her jog off down the street, and he then turned to Gaara again, who didn't look pleased. "Naruto-kun, what are you doing?" Gaara had described to Haku how he had seen their friend making off with a large scroll that he had never seen before. They both tracked him down in a forested area, and Naruto seemed ecstatic to see them. "Haku-kun. Gaara-kun. Check it out." He displayed the large scroll he found. "This forbidden scroll if full of awesome jutsu. Did you ever think that it was forbidden for a reason?" Gaara said pointedly. Haku, however, wasn't as hostile. "Maybe we should hear him out." The red-haired boy gave him an incredulous look as Naruto went on. "But there's more. You see, if we master a jutsu from this scroll, then we can pass the exam and graduate." "Where did you hear that?" Haku asked. He hoped it was true. Gaara remained skeptical. "Naruto was gently slipping the rope off the scroll, Mizuki-sensei told me." Gaara exchanged a confused glance with Haku. "He did? Oh yeah." Naruto nodded while opening the scroll in front of his friends to give them a better view of its contents. "He said any jutsu would work. I say we give it a shot." Haku nodded. "If that's what Mizuki-sensei said, then I have no objection." Gaara watched with his arms folded as the blonde boy and Haku examined the first few techniques. Nothing about this seemed to make sense. Why hadn't they heard of this scroll before? And how did Naruto come by it? Then again, graduating to become a genin sounded just too good for him to resist, and discarding his better judgment, Gaara settled down beside them and took a peek. "Let me have a look." Early evening came, adding to the darkness of the cloudy sky. "It's all over." The three boys looked up to see none other than Yumi no Iruka glowering at him, who seemed disappointed at discovering Naruto along with his fellow juvenile delinquents. Naruto leapt to his feet, closing the scroll, and grinned at Iruka as he stepped in front of Haku and Gaara. Naruto was well aware that even though Haku and Gaara were known to be his closest friends, their records weren't nearly as tarnished as Naruto's yet. Simply put, Haku was a polite, well-behaved boy and Gaara's hobby was sleeping rather than using his free time to vandalize the Hokage monument and such. So Iruka gave props to the three for being good friends in spite of the diversity. Of course, he wouldn't put it past either Gaara or Haku to be enticed when Naruto managed to get his hands on a forbidden scroll. Iruka noted that Haku, genius though he was, wouldn't pass up the opportunity to learn a few Junin-level jutsu, and Gaara, well. In his first years at the academy, he had received complaints that strange, threatening messages were being spelled out in sand across the desks of some students who, coincidentally, Gaara and Naruto weren't particularly fond of. Yet he never could prove Gaara was the one responsible for that, or any other unexplainable phenomena for that matter, like the chairs that were often found snapped in half, the pieces scattered around the classroom in the morning, due to some unseen fits of rage, or the missing window panes, the glass was discovered shattered in piles outside the Yamanaka flower shop, or that freak accident when the roof went missing last year. In other words, Gaara had a clean slate as well. Naruto, on the other hand, drew attention to himself through pranks just for the sake of getting attention. And although he had plenty of intervention from his friends, who often made sure he avoided catastrophic consequences, Iruka could tell that the blonde boy had some help from time to time spreading graffiti on the Ninja Academy's walls. So here were all three of them, caught red-handed. It was disappointing and slightly expected all at once for the young Chunin teacher. Iruka knew they had always been outcasts at their time in the academy. Haku was placed on a high pedestal for being so brilliant, while Naruto was ostracized for being himself, and Gaara was shunned for simply being outlandish, as Jiraiya had once put it. Still, they'd have to learn eventually that they had to stand above the abuse, and not resort to such childish pranks. Naruto chuckled at his teacher's serious face. "You found us already, sensei. We only learned a few jutsu so far." It was then Iruka understood. All of them, sweaty and tired, they had been working hard, that much was clear. Gaara gave a reserved glance to Iruka, sensing that something was not right, but Haku was just as chipper as Naruto. "Iruka-sensei," Haku spoke up tiredly, "we'll show you the techniques we've learned and then we can pass the exam as genin. Anyone who learns at least one jutsu from this scroll passes, yes." "What?" The Chunin was baffled. "Who told you that?" Haku looked taken aback, and Gaara frowned, knowing it was all too good to be true. Naruto, however, was still hopeful. "Mizuki-sensei told me. He told me where to find the scroll and this place." A look of horror and realization came over Iruka's face as Naruto trailed off, looking just as lost as Haku and Gaara. The only thing they all noted was the swift sound of kunai coursing through the air. Gaara's sand shield surrounded him as the knives rained down, while Iruka knocked Haku and Naruto out of the way of the S-hail. Iruka was forced against the wall of the cabin nearby. A few of the kunai had met their mark. Hastily, he removed the knives that had been deeply embedded above his right knee. From the treetops, a recognizable voice called out, "It seems you've found our hideaway, Iruka-sensei." "Mizuki." Iruka snarled, ignoring the dumbfounded looks on Naruto, Gaara and Haku's faces. "So you're the one after the scroll." Mizuki sneered down at him, "I see you've caught on. I wasn't expecting so many to turn out, but no matter." "What are you talking about?" Naruto barked. "What do we have to do with the scroll? Get out of here. All three of you." Iruka ordered, "Go. Take the scroll with you." Mizuki grinned as the three young trainees stood without a clue about what was going on. "Well, it's obvious, isn't it, Naruto-kun?" The silver-haired traitor went on, "You were perfect for fetching the scroll for me. It doesn't seem like something you wouldn't do, so why don't you save yourself the trouble and hand it over to me now?" "No." Gaara spat and then turned to his companions, "Don't play his game. We outnumber him 4-1. He's a coward for using Naruto just to get the scroll. Get out of here. He's a Chunin and he has us right where he wants us." Iruka was glad that Gaara also didn't trust Mizuki, but upset they weren't trying to escape. "Don't let him get that scroll." Mizuki glared at Iruka, doubting their abilities again. "Iruka-sensei. Typical. Why would they bother listening to the one who failed them? You see, they're stronger than they know. That's enough, Mizuki. Naruto's grip on the scroll tightened. He was going to make sure that he didn't hand it over, although he wasn't sure who to trust. Mizuki scowled down at Haku, Gaara and Naruto. Ha! You still don't know, do you? What monsters you all are. Haku had heard this before, and he readied the Senbon Tenten had given him. What are you playing at? Didn't you ever stop to think, Naruto-kun? Why everyone hates you? Mizuki smirked at the boy as he continued. Many years ago the fourth Hokage sealed the vicious beast that attacked our village, the nine-tailed fox, into a young child. Gaara and Haku looked towards Naruto, wondering what the traitor's words could mean. That's enough, Mizuki. Iruka bellowed, throwing his own kunai back at him. Mizuki easily dodged them and landed nimbly back on his tree branch. And that baby, Naruto-kun, it was you. He spat, you are the Kyuubi. Naruto's blue eyes were wide in shock, but in a way, it made sense to him. People always had avoided him and hated him. Now he knew the reason why. So did Haku and Gaara. What did they think of him now? Haku and Gaara only stared at Naruto, at a loss for words. And you? Mizuki suddenly rounded on Gaara, you're from Sunagakure. You're not even worthy to be a shinobi of the Leaf Village. I can't say why the Hokage would want to keep a disgusting monster like Shukaku, the one-tailed tanuki, around. Gaara was flawed. True, he was already aware of his situation, but he certainly didn't want anyone to know about it. The red-haired boy shot a look of loathing at Mizuki, wanting to let his sand crush him into tiny bits. Shut your mouth, Mizuki. Iruka shouted, not believing that Mizuki had disobeyed a direct order from the Hokage to never tell the youngsters of their painful pasts, the pasts they kept hidden from each other. While Naruto and Gaara shook with righteous fury, as two Jinchuriki exposed, Haku knew that he wouldn't be spared. And you, perfect little Haku-kun of the water country, you're a real mystery? Mizuki looked smug. No one would suspect a genius like you to be AM, now would they? There was a silence. Haku knew that what he had tried to hide from his friends for so many years was about to be publicized. It's been kept confidential, of course, but it's hard not to notice on your record that you're held accountable for the M of your own parents. Shut up. Haku threw the senbon needles he had prepared, which caught Mizuki off guard. 3 of which connected painfully with the traitor's shoulder and forearm. But how? Mizuki couldn't believe it. This kid can't aim for his life. When did he? More senbon rained into the tree tops. Haku was inconsolable and charged ahead after Mizuki, completely forgetting that he was a Chunin instructor. Haku. Gaara followed after him, his sand awaiting his any whim. Naruto, however, stood rooted to the spot clinging to the forbidden scroll. Naruto, listen to me, you have to take the scroll and get out of here. Iruka tried one last time talking sense into him, I have to make sure that those two don't get K. At first it seemed as if Naruto hadn't heard him at all. But Iruka watched with relief as Naruto nodded slowly, and then rushed away with the scroll through the forest canopy. Iruka then proceeded to follow after his other 2 students, cursing their foolishness for being drawn into a trap. The entire forest was too quiet and Iruka feared he had lost track of Gaara and Haku. He could only hope that they would be able to fend off Mizuki until he found them. He was surprised when he stepped right into the crossfire between Gaara and Mizuki. Haku was nowhere to be found, he too must have been separated. Unfortunately, Iruka was unable to react in time after Mizuki had hurled his largest shuriken at Gaara, who made no move to dodge it. Get out of the way. Iruka felt his voice had failed him as the enormous weapon collided with the redhead sea. That was until the Gaara he saw began to leak sand instead of B, and then completely reformed into a mold of sand. No doubt Mizuki was frustrated. A sand subsuit. Iruka was impressed and relieved at the same time, but where is the real one? I don't have time for this. Mizuki hissed as he evaded the wave of sand that toppled over the tree he had been using for cover. The traitor rushed ahead, with Gaara at his heels, using his sand to barrel over the trees that his foe lingered in. He's still after the scroll. I have to get Haku and Gaara before he finds Naruto. Iruka bounded after them, diving through the swath of green leaves that surrounded him like an endless ocean. Mizuki grinned to himself while watching a flash of orange dart past him through the tree tops, and then stop, exhausted. It had been easy to lose the dratted sand kid with a simple genjutsu. He's been running for a while, the fool, this makes it all too simple. Mizuki crouched expertly on the branch, making sure the Uzumaki brat had not seen him, and then let a dozen shuriken fly at the boy's head. All in a split second, Naruto turned, looking straight at Mizuki with eyes of deep anger, eyes that didn't really seem to belong to Naruto. The Chunan's breath hitched when he realized that he had been discovered, and worse, that it was not his true target that was nearby. Oh no, this was made plainly clear as Senbon met the projectiles halfway, pinning each to a tree by its center. The image of Naruto disappeared in a cloud of smoke, and where the blonde once was stood Haku, his stormy eyes darker than ever. Unable to believe he had been so easily fooled, Mizuki created a clone to distract the boy and continue his search for the scroll. Where the hell is that kid? He hadn't expected Naruto to cause him so much trouble, or that his juvenile friends would show up to stall his plans. But they didn't matter, Iruka was weak and the rest of them were failures barely worth his time. Mizuki picked his way through the woods with ease, nearing his starting point, and watched as the real Naruto stumbled while he ran, and then collapsed at the base of a tree with the scroll, trying to catch his breath. He raised a kunai, "There you are Naruto-kun." Mizuki aimed for the boy's sea this time, and felt his insides boil when a shield of sand unexpectedly surrounded him. His target looked up, smirking, "Naruto isn't here." Gaara undid the jutsu and let his sand surround his traitorous teacher, or at least, the substitute he had left behind to fool him. The red-haired boy cursed under his breath as the tree he attacked split in half and crashed to the ground in a splintered heap. He was wasting time, and he still hadn't found Haku or Naruto. Iruka leapt down from his vantage point on an oak tree after he had spotted one of his students crouched behind a thornbush. "Haku!" The Chunin barked, and the dark-haired boy turned to him in surprise. "Iruka-sensei." Haku hurried over to his instructor and asked, "Where's Naruto-kun? Is he all right?" Iruka frowned. "For now, I believe." "What were you thinking? Mizuki is dangerous. You and Gaara could have been K." "I'm sorry, sensei." "Fine. For now we have to find Gaara and then return that forbidden scroll to the Hokage before." Iruka was interrupted as Haku plunged a kunai into his teacher's left shoulder and gave him a relentless kick in the gut, sending him tumbling to the hard ground in utter shock. Haku smiled sweetly, "Idiot. Where are they, Mizuki?" Iruka's voice was hoarse and he watched as Haku vanished and his fellow Chunin appeared. "It's not like you care, do you? After all, they're monsters and abominations, they have no place in the world as shinobi." Mizuki shrugged and watched as Iruka struggled to stand. "They deserved every bit of pain I inflicted on them. Why don't you say hi to them when you're Iruka?" A few meters away and out of sight, Naruto had hidden himself behind a tree, still guarding the scroll he had stolen. He did his best to breathe quietly while he listened to the exchange between the two men. Iruka shook his head. "No, I don't believe you. I trained those kids and they're strong. Not even you could hope to defeat the three of them." Mizuki purred while wondering if he should put a kunai in his opponent's eye or T. "You sound so sure." They didn't put up much of a fight. Naruto felt his eyes burn. Were Haku and Gaara really S? Panting, Iruka extracted the knife from his shoulder and let it fall to the tall grass. "It's clear that they're alive. After all, you haven't found the scroll yet." Mizuki looked irked and his voice rose a margin. "Why do their lives matter to you so much? All of them are monsters, causing pain and leaving suffering in their wake. Or have you forgotten that your parents are S because of the Kyuubi? You're right, that is how monsters act." Naruto cringed. "So, sensei really does think we're monsters?" Iruka continued fiercely, "Despite his injuries, but those three aren't monsters. They're good kids, the best I've ever had the pleasure of teaching. The only thing that I see here causing pain and suffering is you, Mizuki. You'll never get your hands on that scroll and they'll make sure of it." "We will." Gaara and Haku leapt down on either side of Iruka, startling both Chunin. From his hideout, Naruto was relieved to hear his friends' voices. "You just don't know when to quit, do you?" Mizuki was seething. "Then I guess you'll just have to learn the hard way." As the traitor reached for his second Fuma Shuriken, Gaara and Haku tensed, preparing for another fight. Iruka wasn't in good condition and Naruto's whereabouts were still unknown. Or were they? The energetic blonde barreled out from the canopy and leapt at Mizuki, planting his knee solidly in the latter's face. Mizuki crumpled backwards, while Naruto landed in front of his companions, his expression determined. We haven't worked this hard for nothing. If you ever touch my friends or my sensei again. Naruto's voice was a snarl, I'll K you. A deranged laugh escaped Mizuki, is that so Kyubi? Before there was a single word of protest from Haku, Gaara or Iruka, Naruto's eyes had narrowed dangerously. He formed the hand seals he had memorized earlier, and cried, Taju Kage Bunshin no Jutsu. 1,000 copies of Naruto filled the entire forest, earning a look of terror from Mizuki. The shadow clones nearest to Iruka and his friends seemed more protective than the rest of them. Iruka was in awe, they're not just illusions, they're solid clones. Gaara and Haku both looked smug. He wasn't able to make this many before. Haku muttered, I suppose this is a special occasion. Hey B. The original Naruto spoke up, what were you saying about knowing when to quit? Every Naruto in the clearing grinned triumphantly as they each got a turn to beat Mizuki's head into the ground. Literally. Here sensei, after Mizuki had been knocked out, Naruto returned the scroll to Iruka, I didn't mean to cause so much trouble. Iruka sighed and looked at the three of his students. They had really pulled through and worked together, and Mizuki's treachery had been exposed and dealt with. They were all silent, still trying to absorb what had transpired. I have to say you all did very well, the Chunin confessed, in fact. His words incurred hopeful looks from the three and the most prominent was the pleading expression on Naruto's face. Substitution, coordination, and shadow clones. Iruka went on, after the way you all fought today, I say you're all more than qualified to graduate. Congratulations, you pass. Of course they were pleased. Yeah. Alright Iruka-sensei. Naruto nearly tackled their teacher to the ground when he hugged him. Haku only bowed respectfully with a word of deep growled, and Gaara's smirk seemed more good-natured than usual. I'm pretty sure we have a few Hittite left over for the three of you, we can stop by the academy later, Iruka added with a smile, why don't we get something to eat first? Funny how we reap rewards after such an excursion. Gaara thought to himself. Woohoo. Sensei you're the best. Naruto had labeled this the best day ever. Oh yes, Konoha didn't know what hit it. That will be all for this video, be sure to like, subscribe, share, and comment down below for more videos, goodbye.